Hello and welcome to DD India. I'm Akshay Dongre and you're watching our special program Voice of the Global South, a show that brings to you stories, news, achievements and concerns of a rising aspirational world. So let us begin with today's episode. India's historic city of Ayodhya has gone through a complete makeover for the inauguration of a temple being built at the birthplace of Lord Rama, one of the most revered Hindu deity across the world. The moment of inauguration is being celebrated similar to the Festival of Lights by over 1.4 billion Indians and Hindus around the world.
Preparations are complete. The temple courtyard is decorated, the premises ready. The sanctum sanctorum is waiting and the eyes of 1.4 billion Indians are towards Ayodhya. The North Indian city in the state of Uttar Pradesh, situated on the banks of Saryu River, is witnessing 7-day rituals of consecration ceremony of the Ram temple, which began on Tuesday. The rituals will culminate on the 22nd of January with the grand ceremony that will be presided over by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and attended by thousands of other guests. A 51-inch tall stone idol of Lord Ram depicting him as a 5-year-old child will be installed in the sanctum sanctorum of the temple. It weighs 150 to 200 kgs, depicting Ram Lalla in a standing posture. In view of Lord Ram Lalla consecration ceremony, security arrangements have been tightened in Ayodhya. As the sacred rituals unfold in Ayodhya, the culmination of meticulous preparations is a testament to the spiritual significance of the moment. The forthcoming grand ceremony, led by Prime Minister Modi, becomes a collective celebration of faith and embodiment of a cultural legacy.
India and Iran, the two major countries of the global south, have historically maintained close ties, and now the two nations have embarked on a journey to further strengthen their relations and to provide better trade connectivity to the world through a multi-nodal transport corridor, the corridor that was discussed on a 2-day visit by the Indian Foreign Minister to Iran.
In a move to bolster Indo-Iranian ties, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar was on a 2-day visit to Iran. The visit also aimed to energize international connectivity with Indian ports via multimodal transport corridor, a move that can significantly help the trade connectivity in South and Central Asian nations. At a meeting held in Iran's capital Tehran, Jaishankar discussed the regional connectivity projects between the two nations. He emphasized the development of Chabahar port that will provide a better connectivity to the international north-south transport corridor, giving a boost to the trade opportunities with Central Asia. As part of the high-level exchanges, India's External Affairs Minister held wide-ranging talks with his Iranian counterpart Hossein Amir Abdullahian and discussed regional and global issues. Both leaders addressed a joint press conference and expressed their interests on the maritime, shipping, Gaza situation, Afghanistan, Ukraine and BRICS cooperation.
We also exchanged perspectives and assessments on certain regional and global issues and developments. Both of us are concerned about recent events in West Asia, which some call Middle East, and we emphasized the importance of preventing further escalation of violence and hostilities.
Referring to the recent attacks on merchant vessels in the Red Sea by Yemen's Houthi rebels, S. Jaishankar reiterated India's stance on threats to maritime shipping in the region.
As you are all aware, there have also been recently a perceptible increase in threats to the safety of maritime commercial traffic in this important part of the Indian Ocean. The minister also referred to it. We have even seen some attacks in the vicinity of India. This is a matter of grave concern to the international community. Obviously, it also has a direct bearing on India's energy and economic interests. This fraud situation is not to the benefit of any party, and this must be clearly recognized.
Meanwhile, as the Israel-Hamas conflict crosses 100 days, Jaishankar also highlighted the importance of preventing further escalation of violence and hostilities in the region.
As you all know, India has a long-standing and uncompromising position against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. This remains so, very much so. At the same time, we strongly believe that it is imperative to avoid loss of civilian life in any conflict situation. The deeply concerning situation in Gaza was naturally a subject of our discussions. The loss of civilian lives, especially that of women and children, was our primary focus. There is a visible humanitarian crisis that needs to be addressed, and the creation of sustainable humanitarian corridors is the need of the day. We welcome the international community's efforts in that direction. India itself has delivered shipments of relief material to Gaza and contributed to the UNRWA.
Dr. Jaishankar met with the President of Iran, Dr. Ibrahim Raisi. Conveying the greetings of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to the Iranian President, Jaishankar thanked him for his guidance in developing ties with India. During their meeting, the Iranian President highlighted India and Iran's deep-rooted relations. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar emphasized India's interest in concluding a comprehensive and long-term cooperation agreement with Iran.
Ever since the Israel-Hamas conflict started, the threat of a spillover has always been present. Now, the spillover has already started and is expanding rapidly, threatening global trade supply routes, which can significantly impact the world economy, and most of all, the economies of the global south. We bring to you details on why the spillover is happening and how can it impact the global south further.
The Israel-Gaza conflict that began on October 7 has been ongoing for more than 100 days, resulting in deaths of thousands, destruction of infrastructure. A major concern for the global south nations was to prevent a spillover of the conflict, which has now started in the Middle East, and it threatens to destabilize economies around the world, especially the growing economies that are much more vulnerable. United Kingdom and United States have been carrying out joint strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. The air and sea strikes against Houthi military targets were in response to the group's attacks on ships in the Red Sea. The multinational operation was led with support from Australia, Canada, Netherlands and Bahrain.
Alongside the United States, with support from Australia, Bahrain, Canada and the Netherlands, we ordered the RAF to strike 2 Houthi military facilities in Yemen. I want to be clear that these were limited strikes. They were carefully targeted at launch sites for drones and ballistic missiles to degrade the Houthis' capacity to make further attacks on international shipping.
In response, Houthis, the military group, struck the US-owned and operated container ship MV Gibraltar Eagle with an anti-ship ballistic missile.
As part of its support for continued Israeli crimes in Gaza, the American and British enemies launched a brutal aggression against the Republic of Yemen with 73 raids targeting the capital Sana'a and the governorates of Hudaydah, Taiz, Hajjah and Sada. The raids resulted in the fall of 5 martyrs and injury to 6 other members of our armed forces.
The strikes come as a response to repeated attacks by the Yemen-based Houthis since November 2023, especially the barrage of drones and missiles on January 10, the largest attack in the Red Sea since the Israel-Hamas conflict. The Houthis' attacks on ships, which began soon after the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict, have disrupted global shipping and supply chains. Targeting commercial cargo ships in the Red Sea has severely impacted the maritime trade. This has forced commercial ships to take a longer, costlier route around Africa, creating fears of a new bout of inflation and supply chain disruption. Around a quarter of the world's shipping containers are being diverted.
The impact on disruption of traffic in that waterway, right? Indian Ocean, Red Sea, Suez, can have catastrophic impact on the global economic situation and catastrophic impact on the humanitarian situation as well.
After the strikes, oil prices jumped by 4% and the cost of shipping containers on vessels has also increased. After the pandemic, prices for both container transport and goods transport have again surged. The situation has now disrupted maritime trade as leading global freight firms began avoiding the Suez Canal and were rerouted to Cape of Good Hope. This impacted the costs of logistics, increasing the fuel costs, reduces shipping efficiencies, and raising the prices of imported goods.
The container companies whose cargoes are transported through containers to European countries through the Suez Canal are now rerouting to Cape of Good Hope, which has increased the cost by 3 times. The exporters are worried because of this issue as it has increased the cost of logistics.
These strikes are a significant escalation and part of the growing impact of the Israel-Hamas conflict and has caused a grave economic consequences. Such strikes raise the risk of regional conflict and lead to major price increases for consumers, adversely impacting the countries of the global south surrounded by the sea.
The world watched as gangsters took over the office of Ecuador's public broadcaster, holding the staff and journalists at gunpoint on live television. This was one of several such incidents taking place in Ecuador as gang war escalates in South American nation, and the government of Ecuador struggles to contain it. The ripple effects of this crisis is being felt all over South America, and the way the newly appointed president deals with it is going to decide the fate of the nation.
Armed gangsters took control of Ecuador's public broadcaster. The takeover was live for 20 minutes as people wielding guns and grenades threatened the journalists. The incident has attracted worldwide attention towards the ongoing gang violence in the South American nation. The crisis, however, has been in the making for some years now.
Then is when I told them, what do you want me to say? Do you want me to demand that the police not enter? Or otherwise you will kill us one by one? This is what they practically forced me to say. Like you saw, after they tucked the dynamite inside my pocket and removed it later on, I was in state of calm.
Security in Ecuador has worsened since the coronavirus pandemic hit the world, which also battered the nation's economy. According to government data, the number of violent deaths rose to nearly 8,000 in 2023, almost double the 2022 figure. The government blames the situation on the growing reach of cocaine trafficking gangs who have destabilized swaths of South America. But the question is, what was the latest trigger? On January 7th, Adolfo Macias, leader of a major criminal gang, disappeared from the prison where he was serving a 34-year sentence. Next day, a wave of violence broke out in at least 7 prisons, with around 180 prison guards and staff taken hostage by inmates. President Daniel Noboa, who took over the office in last November, declared a state of emergency.
I've just signed the state of exception decree so that the armed forces have full political and legal backing in their actions. I call on the citizens because this is everyone's fight and to show their support. We are experiencing a sign that things must change in the country. There's no room for opportunistic politicians to seek advantage amid a prison security crisis. We will not negotiate with terrorists, nor will we rest until we return peace to all Ecuadorians.
In response to the act of violence, military and police operations took place across Ecuador on January 11, with the government pledging to wage war on crime gangs they blame for the unrest.
We have detained many people. There are 14 detainees in 3 operations. One took place in Guayas, where the terrorist gang named Los Lobos was dismantled. In that operation, a woman with no criminal report was detained.
All hostages, including 158 guards and 20 administrative staff held captive, were freed on January 13 evening.
Dear family members, the National Police together with the armed forces have freed hostages. They have been deprived of their freedom for 6 days. They will be handed over to families. They have received a medical checkup. There has been no issue. This is a joint effort.
The action by the authorities in Ecuador has a huge implication on the drug menace impacting a large part of the global South nations. And the results of the ongoing actions by the Ecuadorian president will decide the fate of war on drugs in South America.
We will take a short break here and be back with more Global South stories on the other side. Keep watching.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution. This series is going to tell stories of such change makers. Watch Change Makers on DD India.
India that invents. India that innovates. India that excites. India that invites. Land of possibility. Teeming with opportunities. Watch India Ideas each Thursday, 8 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India and this is Voice of the Global South. Let's move on to our next stories. From global business leaders to academicians, political leaders to civil society members, the world had gathered in Davos, an alpine resort town in Switzerland, for the annual World Economic Forum meeting amid escalating geopolitical tensions around the world. The focus also remained on the agenda of the Global South nations and how the developing world can actually provide solutions to the shaky global economy.
Against the backdrop of escalating geopolitical tensions, increasing food insecurity and threats to the global trade and economy, leaders from global business, government and civil society gathered in Davos, Switzerland for the annual World Economic Forum. The summit was held between 15th and 19th January with the theme Rebuilding Trust. More than 2,800 representatives from over 120 countries and regions discussed urgent global issues to promote in-depth dialogue and cooperation. The 5-day event of the 54th WEF saw countries coming together for the use of new technologies that could prove to be a game changer in the coming years in terms of boosting productivity and helping drive economic growth.
We know that the global economy is not growing as fast as it used to do. And I prefer to look at the glass half full instead of half empty. And even if we have challenges, there is real opportunities moving forward. If we look at the new technologies, for example, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, these can increase the global productivity with 30% in the coming decade. That would be the highest increase in productivity that we've seen.
Speaking at the forum, U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken highlighted the good relations between India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and U.S. President Joe Biden.
We see the remarkable achievements that Prime Minister Modi has achieved, moved forward under his watch that have materially benefited and materially positively affected so many Indian lives. We also see a relationship between our countries that is in a new place, at a new level. And that's been, I think, the very deliberate effort of both Prime Minister and President Biden, who believes in this deeply.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky held talks with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and discussed defense cooperation between Ukraine and the United States. Volodymyr Zelensky also met NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg and discussed assistance needed to define an effective role for global private and public sector leaders in the country's long-term reconstruction. Speaking at a press conference, Zelensky sought international support from the Global South nations.
As for the list of the countries, we are open to all countries of the world that respect our sovereignty and territorial integrity. So you can make your own conclusions about who we invite. We would like the Global South countries definitely to be present.
Meets were aimed at talks to end the wars in Gaza and Ukraine. At the top of the agenda, along with climate change and clean energy transition. Addressing the forum, foreign ministers from Germany and Saudi Arabia called for a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza.
It's a disaster for Israel. We are calling for a sustainable ceasefire because I believe that a ceasefire, unfortunately, doesn't fall from the sky. We can only reach a ceasefire if both sides are ready that the suffering for oneself also ends the suffering from the others.
We need to focus on the immediate crisis. The immediate crisis is the suffering that's happening in Gaza. We're continuing to see that going on. We don't see any real prospects for that ending. And I'm somewhat heartened to see that the international community has been moving more in the direction that we have called for since the beginning, which is calling for ceasefires, which is calling for more humanitarian aid. But we need to do more. Clearly not enough has been done because the killing continues and the suffering continues.
India was represented by ministers Hardeep Singh Puri and Smriti Irani, who launched the Women's Leadership Lounge called We Lead during the 2024 World Economic Forum to bridge the gap between women's economic growth. While representing the Confederation of Indian Industry at the WEF, Indian Minister for Women and Child Development Smriti Irani stated that it is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision to ensure that women's issues are addressed with priority through concrete policy actions. At the 54th WEF annual meet, leaders accelerated global digital inclusion in health, education and finance to empower the developing geographies with an aim towards bridging the disproportionate access to essential life services in the Global South.
Energy security continues to remain a key challenge for several underdeveloped and developing nations of the Global South. One such nation is Benin, a small West African country with majority population having little to no access to electricity. To tackle this challenge, local entrepreneurs have now started coming up with their own unique solutions of providing electricity to their communities, and the best part of this is that these solutions are renewable, addressing another issue of global warming by going green.
Majority of population of Benin, a Western African country, live without electricity even today. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency, only 41% of Benin's total population currently has access to electricity. The condition is even worse in the rural areas. The nation, however, is seeing a revolution in usage of renewable energy, with many organizations now working on providing the region with green sources of energy. Growing up in these circumstances, Naga, an entrepreneur, is now spearheading Benin Biogas, a local firm transforming everyday bio-waste into a powerful energy source. It aims at revolutionizing waste and energy management for hundreds of homes and more than a dozen farms in Benin.
We need to think with simple solutions to create in our environment, solutions so that the population really acclimatizes adopts the technology. You can see what we already do locally. Everywhere we have masons at home, that's where we trained. We took teams, we started working with them, and in the end we saw that by building in grounds, this allows us to work very simply, without machines, without anything besides the waste that we already produce in our homes, in our farms.
Biogas Benin uses reactors transforming organic waste into biogas, a methane-rich energy source which provides cooking and heating fuel for over 560 households. It has networks of concrete tanks beneath neighborhoods and industrial zones.
On this farm, all the waste from livestock and processing will be recovered as gas products in the logic of being able to power the ovens, the whisks for the ovens, the cooking, the toasting, but also produce electricity.
The plants also convert compost waste into high-quality fertilizer, providing support to local agriculture and reducing reliance on imported and expensive alternatives.
Fossil energy will still be used, but the percentage will decrease progressively. And by installing these decentralized power plants in communities, we will realize that at some point we will have an improved quality of life, a totally sanitized place, and that the problem related to availability of fertilizers today will also be resolved. So biogas will not only help Benin to be energy independent, to move to decentralized production, but will also strengthen Benin in the agriculture sector, which employs a good part of the workforce, the valid hand.
The Benin biogas plant converts waste to energy and is a renewed step to environmental stewardship for the country. At a time when the world is grappling with climate change and the search for such sustainable energy solutions, establishment of supply of bioenergy materials can enable developing countries of the global south to support the transition to cleaner and cheaper sources of energy.
This is all we have for you in this edition of Voice of the Global South. Let us know your thoughts on the program. You can also connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching our special program. News and updates continue on DD India. Keep watching. ठीक है